Hey everyone, welcome back to another OSCP journey video. In today's video, we're going to be having some fun getting domain admin. So I've got, I guess I should start it like this. I've been redoing my lab here recently. I have my little fancy home lab. I'm running an ESXi hypervisor, and I've got a whole bunch of vulnerable machines on my network, so I can spin up new machines at my leisure to test out new things, and also just have a nice, cool running lab with some variety, so I can kind of practice my skills, do some different stuff. For the most part, these are like standard vulnerable lab machines from Pentester Lab or Metasploitable. There are a couple of custom configured machines. We'll actually see one of them today. I believe I've actually done it in another video already. But the goal here isn't like the exploitation of services, more so to practice post-exploitation type things like gathering credentials with Mimikatz, or standing up C2s like Merlin or Empire and using their post-exploitation modules, or trying out different techniques with PowerShell. That's kind of the main benefit I get out of the home lab that I wouldn't be able to really use otherwise. Especially, Hack the Box is really great, but unless you pay for some of their more, I guess, challenging or higher tier labs, you don't get things like pivoting or playing around with domains and all that kind of stuff. And I've been told that those labs that they provide, like the Rasta labs, are a fantastic value, and I definitely want to try those at some point. But I want to make sure that I am, even capable of taking on the challenge before I do that. So that's what's cool about my home lab, is I can set up stuff any way I want. The downside is I know how it's set up, so cracking it's fairly easy, I'll say. But as you'll see today, I'll run into my own fair share of problems here and there, and there's still a lot you have to do and a lot you have to remember, so it keeps you sharp. And that's kind of what I'm doing here today. I've been, in setting up the lab, I've been playing around a lot with Mimikatz and Merlin and a couple other neat little tools, neat little techniques like enabling RDP on newer systems and stuff like that. So that's what we're going to do in today's video, and that's just kind of the point, is I've been practicing those things. I want to share what I've learned and also see how good I am at using those, if at all. So let's go ahead and get started. So I have this little funky topology here to kind of demonstrate what we're doing today. There are a lot more hosts on this network. We're going to be focusing on 4 specific hosts. So we have here our domain controller, which this is going to be our in-game target. Then we have a host over here that we'll learn about what it is a little bit later. And it is connected to this main hub. So let me talk about this real quick for a minute. So this is our main hub. This is going to be a 192.168.2 subnet. We're connected to that, so this laptop represents us. So we're connected to that. The domain controller is connected to that. This host is connected to that, and this host is also connected to it. And the firewall that you see here is also connected to this. So there's a WAN port here that it gets its like internet out to this main host. So so that's kind of the main network we're working with. And then behind this firewall is a 192.168.3 subnet that is hosting another couple of hosts, but we're only focused on this one in particular. And this is where things get interesting. So we have access to this, so that's where we are. This host only has access to this subnet, but this host has a NIC that has access to this subnet and this subnet, so it can talk to this host directly. And so does the domain controller. And it's important for the domain controller to have access there, because because this host needs to be on the domain per this fantasy configuration that I've got set up. So because this host needs to be on the domain controller needs to be able to talk to the subnet. For some reason, we have what may be a misconfiguration, or maybe there's a special rule that this host provides. I don't know. I haven't played too much into kind of my lab store here. It's just the way it is. But we have this host in particular has access to that. And so while we won't be able to get domain admin right away or necessarily log into the domain controller right away, we should. Our goal should then be to compromise this host somehow and use it as a pivot to get to this host. Now, the name of the game here is domain admin. And for this particular scenario, we're going to have to compromise every single machine before we can get domain admin. So there's some information on this host that will lead us to some credentials that we can later use here, but we can't even get here until we compromise this host and then pivot here, and then we can take a look at what's going on over at this host, and then this host should hopefully give us access to make controller. So it's a big loop of stuff that you'll see. It'll hopefully make more sense as we go through it. But I just wanted to kind of explain the network layout, because this is going to be a good bit different from some of my other videos. This will be more similar to the pivoting video, only hopefully less issues with exploiting those machines like we had before, since we've solved those problems, and same with the pivoting issues that we had. Right. So with that, we do technically know how to exploit this host, and we are limiting our scope, so I actually know what the exact IP. So we're not doing any network discovery, just because that would take way too long. I've actually tried to record this video like twice now and ran out of space and had some other technical difficulties. So I actually have pre-done a lot of the in-map scans too. That should hopefully help speed things up. But besides that, we are doing it live, so any other unexpected issues that I encounter will be standard, the same as always on the OSCP journey here. So let's get right to it. So I do have this this directory that I've created for working. I'm going to start doing that for my OSCP journey videos, just so I can keep track of any cool things I do. I wish I had been doing that from the start. So these are the hosts that we're going after. We have this 2.54, 2.56, 2.58, and 3.3. We're going to ignore 3.3 right now because we can't even access that. So just so you can see, we can't ping it. If we try to do like an mmap without ping, just to test if it's alive, 3.3, nothing's there, versus if we do the 2. Oh, that's actually saying host is up. I think it's because we put that flag. 2.168.2.3. Oop, no, it's not one. That would be a valid host. 3.3. It's gonna be like, hey, host probably isn't up. And this is just kind of demonstrate that. And while we're doing that, let's do the 2.54. Oop. If I can type today. See, so that's the difference. This one's going to sit here and hang and eventually report back that it can't hit it. That's because we have network segmentation, so we've got to pivot in order to get there. Anyway, so we're going to start with that 2.54 host, and as you can kind of see, there's one of these is a Windows XP. Spoiler alert, it's the one we're about to look at. So this is the 2.54, as you can see here. So this is the mmap scan that we ran. And these are the services we get back. So it looks like port 21 is open, 25, 80, and then some standard Microsoft services. And it looks like it's Windows XP. Probably, does it say any other information here? It doesn't. So that's okay, because we've done, we've actually went ahead and did a vuln scan on this to check for good old MS08. And it says this is probably Windows Service Pack 2 or 3. And we're going to go with 3 based on our current running knowledge of what we've got going on, and it is vulnerable to MS-88067 and also, of course, a variant of MS-17. So we're going to go with the classic MS-08067. So CD in the XP. I've already, like I said, I've already gotten this far in previous videos. So this is our, should less that. This is our exploit. So this actually, if you recall from the last video, we had to shave off 8 bytes. The new Metasploit payload doesn't generate a payload that is 380. It generates a payload that's 388 bytes. So this is still the correct. It should still have our same IP and everything like that, but we need to make sure we specify the correct port. I believe it was LEET. We'll find out if it doesn't work. But yeah, this is our custom shellcodes already put in here, and we shaved off 8 bytes of the NOP to make sure everything would fit. Alright, so now we're going to, I'm going to come over here and not make this mistake that I made last time. We're going to start up a new TMUX session. We'll call it C2. And in here we will leave a blank terminal for that, and then we will make this one, call it SF console, because we're not really using the Metasploit features. We're just using the multi-handler for C2. And the reason we're doing this is for multiple reasons. That I've kind of discussed in other videos and had to justify and combat use cases, but because the multi-handler is allowed on the OSCP, I like to use that wherever possible. I also like to use other C2s wherever possible. So even if I get like a plain shell using PSExec, or maybe I exploit something and I get a shell back over netcat, maybe I use a stageless payload, all that's all fair and valid, but it's really hard to keep up with all those hosts. So what I feel is smart, and this is also pretty good practice too professionally, is to forward back some connections to C2s. I've seen a lot of IPsec videos where he kind of hands off sessions to Empire. And that's because frameworks like Empire and Merlin are post-exploitation command and control frameworks. And so part of your post-exploitation process should be to establish some persistence. And we're going to do a lot of that today. We're going to be establishing some RDP persistence. We're going to be establishing some C2 persistence. And I'm going to use mostly Merlin. My Merlin instance is kind of bugging out. There are some cool new things in Merlin called modules. And you can actually do like invoke-mimikatz and load it into memory and bypass AV with the current Merlin payloads. And it's really kick-ass. But the third time I tried to record this video, that feature broke, and I'm not sure why. It gives like some divide by zero error, which is classic, but I'll fix that later. We're going to use its other functionalities at some points, but besides that, we'll use standard Mimikatz whenever we use Mimikatz. I have the distributable binaries ready to go. But yeah, so I always like to use the multi-handler or any C2s when I'm going to be going after multiple hosts, which is 9 times out of 10. That way you can manage them better. If that netcat shell can die at any second, there's a lot of instability there. And at least if you've got it back at a C2, and you want an interactive shell, you can always execute something to get that netcat shell back. So that's why I like using the multi-handlers and some post-exploitation C2s. So exploit multi-handler. And we're going to use payload. It was Windows shell reverse TCP. Okay. Oh, sorry. Set payload. Set lhost 192.168.2.186 should be us. Our port should be elite. And we can set off that multi-handler. All right. And back over here, we'll do our exploitation. So xp, do python xp.py. Actually, we need to be careful. There's an issue we're going to run into later that's going to require us to specify that as well in a script. I'll show you guys that. Maybe it'll help you guys if you ever run into this issue again. So as you may know, on most modern systems, Python is finally being deprecated. It's right around the corner of death if it hasn't already reached end of life. I'm not really keeping up with it, but Python 2 is definitely on the end of life train, and so Python 3 is now usually on modern systems the default alias for Python. So if you type Python, you're usually running Python 3 now, not Python 2. If you want to run Python 2, you have to specify it. And I'm running on Arch, which is the bleeding edge of bleeding edge right now, similar to like rolling releases of Kali, or I think even the latest Ubuntu release has it set up like this. So I have to be careful when I'm using these old Python tools that specify Python 2. So that's what we're doing here. 2.54 is that XP host. And we know it's option 6 because it's not always on NX. It's just service pack 3 in X. And so we're going to hit that. It's going to reach out, and we can go over to our C2, and we got our session. And we can interact. If we can type sessions instead of sessions. All right, cool. And we know we're in T-theory system just by the nature of this exploit, and because we're real smart. But of course, we could test that by writing different directories, but I'm not going to waste a whole lot of time doing that. All right, so this is great because we have an interactive shell. And what's great is we can do things like background, and we can always come back to it later. So now what we're going to do is poke around on the system. So actually I want to go back and interact, and we're going to go into documents and settings, and we're going to go into John and see what's up. There's nothing in John. We've got some interesting stuff going on here. An administrator? Nope, we don't. So we saw this weird user called mega admin. So we're going to check it out. I haven't even been checking the documents, all these. Spoiler alert, I know exactly where it is. So here we go. We got this notes.txt. So notes.txt. Sue will be out of the office for spring break. She does this every year. I wonder where the hell she goes. Okay, so we know there's a mega admin user. We know there is a we know there is a John user, and we know there might be somebody named Sue, unless Sue is the mega admin. And Sue likes to go out of the office for spring break every year. So that maybe that's a hint for some other stuff that we can use later. So we'll have to keep that in mind. But what we're going to do now is see if we can get some credentials off this box using Mimikatz. So what I have here is a little cheat sheet in my scripts. So I have this enable RDP windows. I'm actually going to edit this real quick. Because this is actually... And I need to remind myself not to skip this step because that's usually my fatal flaw whenever I do that. So let's cat that again. All right, so there's a couple things we have to do to start RDP. And the reason we're doing this is because there's no PowerShell on this 32-bit XP box. So that makes it really hard to do things like grabbing things off a web server and stuff like that. There are some built-in utilities and some ghetto things we can do with Internet Explorer to do things from the command line, but honestly it's way easier just to run a couple of these commands and open a web browser in RDP. So we're going to do that instead. Right, so we're going to copy this, start term service. We're going to add the registry key to automatically start it if this reboots. We're going to add a user. We don't want to modify any credentials of the administrator, even though we could. So we're going to add ourselves in-game and create a password of hacked123, add, and then we're going to say net local group administrators in-game add, make sure we're admin, net local group, remote desktop users in-game /add. Beautiful. All right, so we should be an admin on the box and we should be able to RDP in. A local admin specified. We're not domain admin yet. So this is not going to get us into the domain controller. So we allow it on the firewall. Set this last registry key to allow those connections. And now what we should be able to do is we'll make this a new terminal. Hop over to our desktop and specify user in-game. We'll request type in the password 168.2.54, and our password was some leet speak tac 123, and looks like system cannot log you on. Maybe I typed in my password wrong. It's trying to log me into the domain. I want to be local. That's probably what the problem was. It's currently logged on the computer. Sure, let's kick them off. We don't need them. All right, so it's setting up our desktop. While it's doing that, let's go back over to our kind of C2 area, and we will go to our documents scripts, and we'll go to Mimikatz. I want to go to the Win32, and we're going to start up a simple HTTP server for port 8080 to serve up Mimikatz. HTTP server, not server. All right, we'll open up internet. HTTP //192.168.2.186 on port 8080. Perfect. And we'll download our mimikatz.exe. Save it. We'll save it to sure, why not desktop? All right, cool. And now we're going to go back to our command shell in MSF console, and we're going to go to documents and settings. I believe there's actually a shortcut command for that, just don't know what it is off the top of my head. We're going to go into the in-game directory. It's our home folder for our user. If we can type. Jeez. No, we were on desktop. Mimikatz was. Perfect. So Mimikatz.exe. Perfect. All right. So Mimikatz is a great tool to do lots of different things, but in particular, we're going to be doing credential gathering. So we have to do a couple things. I have like a cheat sheet open here that we'll copy from. So first off, we need to make sure it knows we are admin. So debug privilege. And then we have the Secursla plugin, which is one of the many ways you can get credentials. So this is this particular command for logon passwords is going to get the clear text passwords out of memory. So it's not hashes, or it's not just hashes. It actually gives you what the actual password is, which is stupid useful and stupid powerful, especially on older systems. This does not work on modern Windows 10 machines. There are other ways to get hashes and some other useful stuff, but the clear text credentials typically don't work. I believe there are some extra fancy modules to help still do some similarly useful stuff, but keep that in mind. But on Windows 7 and I believe even Windows 8 systems, this should still work. But this is XP, so it's definitely gonna easy peasy. So we run that. Let's see what kind of creds we got. So you scroll up. So we see us, it sees our credential here. We've got our NTLM hash, so we could pass the hash if we needed to. Got the administrator credential, which is pwnme. And I believe since we kicked off that mega admin user, we may have lost access to their credential. But that's okay. Because I don't believe they're actually a real admin. Trying to see if there's anything I can do to help myself out here with that. Yeah, because it's not wanting to do that. That's okay. So we kind of screwed that up a little bit, but that's okay. That's part of what happens when you do crap like that. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with stuff in memory like that. We are going to try a couple of other interesting things. Like maybe we can see some Kerberos type stuffs. So we're going to see what's going on here. Not particularly useful. There is... Ooh, there's all kinds of cool stuff. You can even pass the hash from Mimikatz. Mimikatz is awesome. All right, so yeah, we're pretty much done all that we can do here. Wasn't a whole lot useful except for maybe that note that we should keep in mind moving to the next box. So let's background this session and go over to our other little area here. So the next host we had in the list was .56. So if we cat mmap win10.mmap. So this is a Windows 10 machine, and it's got a lot of services open. So we've got port 21, port 80, port 443, port 3306, and port 8080. So let's go check out port 8080. And you may notice that I'm skipping a lot of like the FTP stuff. That's because even though this is cool, and it's like FTP with anonymous login and all that kind of stuff, it's not going to be a whole lot of use to us if the server doesn't have ASPX like access. And because this is your standard Windows start page, it's not likely that that has been enabled. There's a chance you could try that, but that's not usually where I'm going to start. So if we go to like the standard 80, it's an IIS page, but 443 had like some XAMPP stuff going on. So if we go to HTTPS, just realized I haven't been showing the Firefox window this whole time. So let me kind of backtrack that. That is embarrassing. I'm definitely not going to re-record this for the 50th time. So let's get on over here, open this window, and I'm going to drag these over here, kind of show you guys what the hell's been going on this entire time. You've been in the dark, right? So this is the that is hilarious. So this is the XAMPP server. Here is the PHP info I was talking about, right? And this is our shell that we got. So let's actually, and here's the kind of payload we ran to get all that going. I am so sorry that I have not been showing that this whole time. I will probably have this edited and swapped around in some form or fashion so that you guys kind of get the gist there. But sorry for the janky screw up there. Oh, the service is running as system. So we've got local admin access via the shell. So we're going to do a couple things. The first and probably most important thing we'll do here is set up a Merlin instance to make commanding this easy. And that is because we know this is a Windows 10 machine, and it doesn't look like the firewall's open for some standard Windows services. So that tells me the firewall's probably somewhat turned on, and or at least has defaults is what it seems like, which means default Windows Defender is probably also set up. So there's a couple things we could choose to do. We could just turn off Windows Defender and load up ncat and get a nice interactive shell, or we can load it into the Merlin C2, because really the only benefit we're going to get out of this box is some exploration, which we can do in Merlin, and also we need to upload something like 3proxy or ncat. And if we were going to use ncat, we'd need to do some bypassing, but 3proxy does not detect by Windows Defender by default. So it's better if we just don't touch any settings. It's a little bit quieter, and we get to practice with some different tools along the way. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use Merlin as our post-exploitation C2. So we're going to come back over here, and we're going to stand up Merlin. So we're going to go to go source GitHub Merlin, and we are going to, I guess, just start up the Merlin C2. I'm trying to think if there's any other prereq stuff we need to do. I believe I already have agents compiled here. Yes, I have a 32-bit agent and a 64-bit agent. So we should be able to just sudo Merlin tag server, and we'll specify that we want to listen on 2.186. Beautiful. All right, so we've got our Merlin C2 listener over there. So now what we'll do is we need to go package up those agents and send them on their merry way. And we're going to get our PS one-liners, which currently the only one-liner I have in there is basically the PowerShell wget. And since this is a Windows 10 system, this should work great. At least we'll give it a try. Didn't copy that correctly. All right, anyway, so what we're going to do from this point on is pick back up and do this PowerShell one-liner to do 192.68.2.186 on port 8080, and we're going to be getting our agent.exe from Merlin. I'm glad the majority of what I've been doing has been in the terminal and not in the browser until now. All right, so we're going to write this to Windows/temp and get that. And we're going to go back over to our C2, wait for this to hit. Hope that it hits. All right, download the agent successfully. So now what we can do is go over to Merlin and go back over to our browser and actually execute c:\windows/temp/agent.exe, and this should launch the agent. Perfect. So we received a new agent check-in. We can interact with that agent. Get some help. Agent CMD. Who am I? Just to make sure everything's working. Oops. CMD. Who am I? Not agent CMD. And see if that works. All right, NC authority system. So it looks like everything's working great. What we want to do now, so Mimikatz isn't going to work on this system the way we want it to because it's Windows 10. But we want to check out those network interfaces as described by the topology. So we'll launch cmd.exe, do ipconfig/all, and that should give us all the network information we want to see where we need to pivot to. So it looks like this is definitely on that network. So it looks like we have one internet adapter, 2 internet adapters. Looks like we maybe only have 2, not 3. Thought it had 3, but it doesn't matter. It has the 2 we need. So it has this 192, and it has this 192. It has this 192.168.2 and 192.168.3, and it is .34. So this is going to be a host that we're going to be able to pivot through. In the contrast, just so you guys don't think I'm a liar, we can go over to here. We don't need that anymore, and we can do the same thing. This only has the 2 interfaces. This is like a cool VPN thing that I've got going on that doesn't pertain to what we're doing in the lab right now. And then it only has the .2. So that doesn't really help us a whole lot. But this guy we can pivot through. So what we're going to do is go into our pivoting directory where we have some 3 proxy stuff. So we're going to do 3 proxy 64-bit. And get the absolute path. So when you're dealing with Merlin, especially with file uploads and executing stuff, you're going to want to specify absolute pass every time, or you're going to hate your life, and you're going to see what I mean. This one's kind of self-explanatory for like where we're writing the files and stuff like that. So we're going to write this one to temp, and it's going to be 3 proxy.exe. And that one kind of makes sense, right? And even the next one we do is going to kind of make sense. So this is going to be the config. So I have like a standard proxy config, and it's real simple. But we're going to do kind of a similar thing. There we go, upload proxy.cfg, and we're going to upload this Windows temp proxy.cfg. Looks like we successfully uploaded the the 3 proxy. Now we just have to wait on the proxy config to upload. So what I mean by the absolute path stuff here is in a second when we execute these commands, we're going to have to specify the absolute path of Windows temp 3 proxy and Windows temp proxy config as the parameter. If you don't do that, it's going to freak out. It doesn't even though if you do like a dir, or even if you change directories and do a dir and it sets in, it remembers where you are. It's not going to do like a real path relative where you are for your parameters. It's really finicky like that, so keep that in mind. So we're going to do a CMD, and we're going to run Windows temp 3 proxy.exe, and the config file that it's going to require us to pass to it is going to also be in Windows temp and proxy.cfg, and we're going to run that. And there's an important thing we have to do here, because what we're going to notice, and I'll actually show that once that executes, is if we do an mmap tac p 1080 on port, or I mean on host 192.168.2 dot what was it, 56, it's filtered right now, which we won't be able to hit it doing filtered. It needs to be open. So what we have to do is actually turn off the firewall. So turn off, I'm Googling off to the side here, turn off Windows 10 firewall, CMD. So it's real simple to do this. And all it takes is us going over to, I'm actually going to do this from our cool little shell we have going on here. It's just easy to execute one-liners like this. So yeah, netsh adv or advanced firewall set all profiles state off. Should say okay if it executes correctly. Sweet. And then now when we do that same scan, SOCKS proxy is open. So that's important because it had the firewall on. Remember, it didn't have like the default Windows services. And likewise, if we don't do a specific port scan now and just do a basic port scan, this should return back fairly quickly, I think. Yeah. So now you can see all like the default Microsoft ports open, or at least like 445. So with that, let's make sure our proxy chains is set up correctly. So we'll have to cat etc proxy chains. Looks good, 2.56, 1080, so it's set up from the last time I had to do all this. And then we're going to do a proxy chains in map. So I've already done this, and if this takes too long, I'll just show the output. I just want to make sure this is working, so I'm going to do this anyway, and I also want to demonstrate how you do this. So you have to disable ping, because ping ICMP doesn't work through proxy chains. Also have to run this as sudo for some of the other commands I'm going to do. I want TCP, I think that's ST, can't remember. You don't really need that argument, but I'm doing it just to specify so it doesn't do anything crazy. Trying to think here. Let's do a quick man in map because I don't want to be telling you guys wrong. I don't want to be lying to myself either. That's more important, right? Don't lie to yourself. Lie to everybody else. So you have SI, Zombie, SN, SS, so that's Connect. Yeah, TCP Syn Connect. So SS, ST, SA, SWSM, or yeah, TCP Syn, and then you have just Connect, and then you have ACK. So that's all ST is just saying do a simple TCP Connect. Don't do a Syn. All right. So yeah, so we're gonna do that. And we're going to specify port, some common ports. So we're going to specify 21, 22, 23. We need a comma to limit these. 22, 23, 80, 443, 445, 3389, 3306. And that should be plenty for this just to see if it's up. Increase the speed. Be more aggressive, and 3.3 is the host we're going after. And the reason I do this is because doing scans through a pivot can be very slow, and so even if you do like default ports, the scan can usually take a while, and so that's why I specified a couple of common ports so we can see what we're working with. And it looks like out of all those common ports, that 445 was open, and 445 is SMB, and that tends to have a lot of vulnerabilities associated with it. So if we do a quick OS detection with that, I don't think that's supported over proxy chains actually. Darn it. So if we do a script vuln, what this should do is see if 445 is vulnerable to anything. And this would also reveal a lot more information about the Windows version as well. So let's let that run for a second. So it looks like this is vulnerable to MS17010, which means this is likely a Windows 7 box. I wish it would tell me more information about the host so we can check out some of those pre-done scans that we had. So what was it? Actually, I deleted all those. Whoops, never mind. So we didn't have scans. I'm glad we did that. All right, so it does seem like it's vulnerable to MS17010. So there are a couple of cool things that we can do to check to verify version information using the AutoBlue scripts that I've showed before. So the first thing we're going to do is proxy chains the eternal blue checker and point that at 168.3.3. So we already know it's vulnerable to eternal blue based on the mmap checks, but this is going to Got to specify Python 2.7. This is going to verify the Windows version, so that's going to give us something that the standard nmap scan wouldn't have given us without specifying other options. So the target OS is Windows 7 Service Pack 1, confirmed it's not patched. We had access denied to all the name pipes though. So let's do some setup. So we're going to have another MSF console open for this. Actually want to kind of go back and we'll call this Eternal Blue and do our listener prep. So listener prep.sh, and we're gonna have basically two MSF consoles running just because I could go set this up real quick. It wouldn't take long in our current MSF console, but this is just gonna be way faster. So port 9000, port 9001, and we want to do a regular command shell. It's gonna start up that listener. And while we're at it, port 3389 wasn't open, so that's one of the other things that I wanted to try to do. But we are going to try something before we exploit this. So we are going to go back to our scripts and go ahead and prep our shellcode. So if we go to shellcode, there's a modification we have to make to this real quick. This is going to vary for you based on the system you're on, but this whole Python right here, I have to specify as Python 2.7 or else it's not going to work because it's going to try to run it as Python 3. So if we run shell prep, yes, we want to use MSF Venom 168.2.186. We want to listen on crap. We did 9000 on 9001. Normally I do 9001 and 9002, so that's why I had to check that. Because we have to be over 9000. This one has one that's exactly 9000. So don't hate me. All right. So do we want to generate a stage payload or stay list? We want to generate a stage payload. So it's going to generate our stage shell for MSF Venom. If you wanted to use incat instead of the multi-handler in MSF console, you could generate a staged list payload and try that. I have not really tested that. We may go back and test that if I feel like I have time in this video later. Probably won't, but just throwing that out there. Okay, so that's good to go. One thing I do want to try real quick is psexec, which is an in-packet library, and we're going to try it against this host. So we're going to say proxy chains, psexec, psexec.py, and we need to specify a couple things. So I'm going to specify the domain, which we haven't really taken a look at the domain controller yet. So let's go look at the nmap scans we have for that. So this is our domain controller. And the reason we know it's our domain controller, or at least we're pretty sure, is 1, because it's Windows 2016 server. 2, because it's got some Kerberos and LDAP ports open, which are used to handle authentication with DCs. The host info is pwn.dc, and the domain name is pwn.local. So we're pretty sure .58 is our DC, right? But that's what's going on here. None of these things are necessarily vulnerable. It's just got DNS, port 80 is open on iOS, or not on iOS. And everything else is pretty standard. They do have a RDP service open, but yeah. So we're going to specify pwn.local as our domain, Sue as the user we're going to try to hack, and we're going to try a couple variations of the password spring break at 192.168.2. Or 3.3. Looks like that's not working the way we want it to work, which is interesting. So I had a timeout connection refused. All right, so now we're going to use a tool called crackmapexec, which actually makes use of the in-packet libraries. and we're gonna get some help. I kind of like this better just because the authentication thing is better and it's still using the same kind of stuff underneath. All right, so we're gonna do a proxy chains CME SMB, and we're gonna do a basic say TAC U is Sue, TAC P is spring break, TAC D capital, no, lowercase d is pwn dot local, and we're just gonna say who am I for the command we're executing. This is going to do basically like a WMI exec using the impacted libraries, and it didn't do anything. Oh, it's because I'm an idiot. It wasn't a sudo issue, it was a you didn't specify the fucking host issue. Alright, so it's going to try that, and it's ultimately not going to work. I think it's going to run on the same timeout issue as before. And since that is happening, I do want to verify that port 445 is still up and running. If we can type in our password correctly. So it looks like this host might be having some issues, and it could be related. You got to be careful because Eternal Blue is very unstable, and so it could be that it's having issues related to scanning that service. Remember, vuln scans do have the ability to knock over services because they are testing for the legitimacy of an exploit, of a vulnerability working. And so it might actually like partially exploit it. And I'm also not sure if that checker script did it or what. So we got to be careful with that. I'm going to reset that machine real quick just to make sure. And it should be set up any second now. And then what we'll do is do the basic scan. Oh, sorry. It may have been fine the whole time. I just had the operating system detection flag. But regardless, we had a fresh reset, so we should be good to go. So let's see. 4445 screams at us yet or not. It's closed. Which is not right. It is also possible that our proxy is having some issues. So we need to double check on our proxy as well. So we'll do that. So it appears to be closed. We will check on our proxy. Proxy's open, so that's not the problem. Not real sure what our problem is here. Okay, it's open now. Maybe it was just taking a second to get set up. Alright, that is all well and good. So what we're going to do now is, again, try to do that crack Mac exec. Alright, looks like we're at least getting some authentication work. So we're going to try a couple variations of the password spring break. I could like do a fancy list building thing, but we're not going to do that. We're going to try a couple variations and see what we can get out of this password and see if it gets us anywhere. So the first thing I'm going to do is change all the numbers to letters. Or all the vowels to numbers. Whew. All the vowels to numbers. Do kind of like a somewhat leet speak thing. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to change the for to an at symbol, because sometimes whenever you're doing that kind of stuff, for or at will be interchangeable for quote unquote leet speak. I don't really think that's as uncommon as some other alternatives, whatever you have. I'm no expert at this. That's what I'm kind of droning on, making guesses. But the reality is that's the password, and that's why I did it that way. So yeah, so we were able to guess their password, and if we had made a password list with various what am I trying to say? With various permutations of the word spring break, we would have had that in the list for sure. So we would have cracked this. So fairly easy password to crack if you just throw the word spring break and do a couple permutations of that word. All right, so we are good to go there. But the problem is that we didn't get any command execution back, which means that this user doesn't have permission to write these shares. It's just a user. And we could even try to do like a ps exec thing again, now that we know what the credential is. I don't know if this @ symbol is going to cause any issues or not. We try this. Yeah, okay, so it works, but the admin, there's no shares that Sue has permission to write to. And we know port 3389 isn't open. We can verify that real quick. So I don't think we can RDP into this host either. Cool. So that's why we are going back to Eternal Blue. And that's why we did that enumeration. You know, I didn't want to use Eternal Blue right off the bat because it is kind of finicky sometimes. Wanted to see what kind of options there were, but we are out of options and we need admin now. So we're going to go to we're already in our shellcode directory. So we're going to do proxy chains, Python 2.7 Eternal Blue exploit 7.py, and we're going to specify 192.168.3.3, and our shellcode's in shellcode sc all bin. Smash enter. Exploit went through, and we got a session open. Sessions tech I. All right. And we are into the authority system, which is great. So now we can actually write to stuff and do cool thingamajigs and whatnots. What we're going to do is do our best to get Mimikatz on this system and also see what kind of credentials we can go after here. We know Sue's password, but Sue is not an administrator. So one thing we could do is promote Sue to a local admin. So that way we don't have to create new noise on this box. So we can say net local group administrators Sue/add. And then we can go back over here to our cheat sheets and we can cat the, not that one, that's a Windows Provesk. What am I doing? Just ls. Enable RDP. And this is going to be very similar to XP, but we're going to change one of the commands around to make sure it's going to work. So we'll start net term service, right? Then we will update the register key to automatic. Beautiful. Then we need to, I think Sue's already in this group, but we can never be too sure. And the reason I think Sue's in this group is, one, because I know, and two, because it makes sense for a user on the domain to have RDP access to various different machines. And because Sue is logged in on this machine, or at least because Sue can log into this machine like we verified with crackmap.exec, it is possible that she is already an RDP user. We just don't have RDP. So we're going to make sure that she is. And then we're going to undo our firewall stuff, or poke a hole in our firewall. We could just disable the firewall, but and our big old don't skip step. Awesome. Now you'll notice me doing a lot of kind of stuff, and I've mentioned several times, oh, we could just disable Windows Defender, disable the Windows firewall. Don't take that for granted. If you've got local admin and you're having trouble doing stuff, just do that as like a last resort, because it's gonna work. That's something a lot of times I'll have a conversation with sysadmins or other IT people, and they'll be like, oh, well, you can't run Metasploit, or you can't do this, or you can't do that because AV won't let you. Be like, well, if I've got local admin on at least one of your boxes that has all that stuff enabled, well, then I'll just turn it off or make exceptions, and then the stuff will work. And then I can set up some crazy tools on the network like Responder or load up Mimikatz, see what's in memory. Like, you can do all those things once you have that level of access. Now, keep track of what you do, especially if you're on an engagement, because you're going to need to make note of that so they can go back and undo it, or you can help them undo what you did, and be sure that you clean up after yourself where appropriate. They'll just go turning off stuff and be like, oh, I don't know what happened. Like, that's careless and irresponsible if you're being a professional. If you're a criminal, who cares? But definitely in my world, that's extremely important. But we should have all that stuff good to go. So let's open up another our desktop. So we'll do our desktop tac u su tac PTAC 192.168.3.3, and we need to proxy change this. And her password was spring break with some funky stuff. Username and password is incorrect. That's because we're trying to log in local. We didn't specify the domain, so we need to switch user to other user. pwn.local/su. There we go. Awesome. Now, the reason we did that is because we want Mimikatz again. So we are going to go back to our kind of like C2 thing that we had going on here. And we're going to go back to Mimikatz and start up a simple HTTP server again. Notice there's a lot of this. This is an extremely useful method of getting data on PCs, and it just looks like web traffic. You can get even fancier with this instead of like an Apache server with SSL certs and have everything encrypted. It's a web server. You can get as crazy as you want to get with it. You'll notice that even though I'm on this other network, it has connect back access to me. That's because remember the network topology of the firewall had a WAN port onto this network. Hosts on this subnet have access to host on the top level subnet, but not the other way around. So we can't talk to it, but it can talk to us. And the only reason we're able to talk to it now is because we're proxying through another host. All right, so we'll save Mimikatz. We'll save that to our downloads, I guess. Cool. And then we will go back to our C2 kind of area. Kill that, and we'll do cd/users. Let's see who's on this box. Yeah, administrator, please give us su. So we'll go to su. cd downloads. Mimikatz. See. Privilege debug. Sweet secure. Log on passwords. Can't believe I'm remembering all this. Huh. Apparently I'm not. Secursa. Log on passwords. Beautiful. All right, let's see what we've got going on here. So we've got. Doesn't look like we have what we need. That's real disappointing. I swear that would have worked. Let's do some quick poking around, because that's not the expected result here. Doing some kind of off to the side black magic tomfoolery to make sure my setup was correct, and I have not foiled myself. I usually have foiled myself. Yeah, that's probably exactly what the problem was. All right, so we'll wait for a couple seconds to see what's going on. But basically, when we run this again, we should see some new credentials there. I believe something similar happened when we signed on again. These snapshots are supposed to have stuff where credentials are stored in memory, and what's cool is if I were to use not standard Mimikatz, and I believe if I were to use invoke-mimikatz, this would have worked no problem. Which is why I like using Merlin, because I think when you log on with RDP, you create some issues with the credentials that are stored in memory. So if you were to launch Merlin C2 and then do like invoke-mimikatz and PowerShell and not log in again, not give new credentials or reset anything, it would work fantastic. But unfortunately, we had some issues that I had to compensate for just now. So we're going to try that again and see what we get. So trying to see. Here we go. All right, so here's our latest instance of what we just ran. We have a new credential, so we have an empty elm hash for the administrator. We have their cleartext credential, yeet leet pound, and then we still have Sue's credentials here as well. That's what we should have seen the first time we ran this. All right, so that looks like it's the domain admin's credential, and the reason we know that is because it is logged in from the pwn domain, from the pwn domain controller, and is administrator. Pwn.local, so that's how we know that. So now we can try to go log in, do our final RDP tab, and compromise the domain controller and get domain admin. So if we are desktop DACU administrator TAC PTAC, and we go after 192.168.2.58 because everybody knows admins like the remote access, and we type in yeet leet pound as the credentials. Credit SSP is required by server. So this is a cool error that I learned about recently. So our desktop, of course, is a Linux remote desktop RDP client that isn't standard. It's a third-party client. It's kind of older. It doesn't implement a lot of the new security features. And even though it's like the go-to because it's so easy to use, it does have it is out of date. And so this error is caused by whenever you enable RDP on a Windows server, there's a little checkbox underneath it that says basically like allow only authorized RDP clients. So like basically only allow new Microsoft RDP clients that have the correct standards implemented, which excludes remote desktop. So if you wanted people to be able to use our desktop, you'd have to uncheck that. But again, that's using some out-of-date standards. Luckily, there is a program called FreeRDP, which does implement the correct standards, but its syntax is kind of weird to use, and I don't really care for it too much. But it works great, so that's why I do like it. It gets around this particular issue. So we're going to kind of follow their examples here. Where was it? Here we go. So we'll do x freeRDP /u administrator /p elite, and we will connect on 192.168.2.58 on port 3389. I don't even think that's necessary because it's default, but whatever. And bam, implements it no problem, and we're logged on. And we can do a couple things now, like go to the admin tools and go to Active Directory, and we'll kind of take a quick dive into what this is and what's going on here. So we are, of course, the pwn administrator, so we are the admin over the entire domain. This is us right here. We are a member of administrators, domain admins, domain users, enterprise admin, remote desktop, etc. Here's John, so we can kind of see what John had access to and what was going on. So John is a member of domain users and RDP users, and he only has permission to log on with RDP to the pwn XP box, which was the XP machine. We see mega admin here is just a user. They weren't even admin, so that's a red herring. So even if we had done the XP box correctly and sniffed their credentials, it wouldn't have done us any good because they're just a user. They don't even have RDP, right? And they can log on to all of the computers, but they don't have RDP access. So you'd have to have physical access to the machine, which we technically don't. So that's like a red herring account. Sue is a member of, that went away. Come back. Sue is a member of RDP and domain users, but she's also just a regular user. But they can log on to all computers, not just the XP box. So if RDP was enabled on anything but the DC, you could log into like the 7 box if RDP was enabled. You could log into, which we did. We could log into the XP box with Sue. We could log into that Windows 10 box with Sue as well. So that's kind of what was going on in the back end. And now that we're domain admin, we can reset credentials, we can add new users, change permissions, and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And so that's the power that having local admin gives you, even on like a local network. So yeah, there you go. I apologize if there's any kind of like weird mic noise. I'm going to do my best to edit that out in post. I knocked the mic around a couple times. Probably like a unnecessary comment here and then, but just want to make note of that. So yeah, lots of weird things happened in this video, but we ended up with our overall success, which is great. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was fun to kind of go through and sharpen all these skills and check out some different tools and techniques. I just have recently finished chapter 6, which is the shellcode chapter of Art of Exploitation. So I'm getting real close into diving into exploit development type stuff. Recently, exploitexercises.com kind of died down, or kind of died off, and is now like a parked ad space domain, which is really sad. But luckily, a couple nice people in the community have set up some mirrors and also identified the original like Google Drive links on the site. I'm also including that. I have set up a mirror on injection.org. It's exploit-exercises.injection.org. Of course, injection has a 0 if you guys are familiar with my website. And it's just a direct one-to-one mirror of the original exploit-exercises.com. I have made like 1 or 2 modifications. I removed like a dumb thing on the homepage that was an event that never happened, and or has already happened, 1, 2. And I actually am hosting some of the downloads. So the original downloads for like all the ISOs and challenges are Google Drive links, which are still available. You can even get them on the cached version of the website, and somebody else has a mirror that has those direct links as well. I have downloaded all those original files and uploaded them onto my website's file server. So I'm hosting direct downloads of those as well. And VulnHub, of course, also has some pretty solid mirrors. So there are 3 ways to get them. So long live the exploit exercises. I will have some links to those in the description. But yeah, with that, I'm going to be diving into those pretty soon. I just have 3 more chapters to finish in the Art of Exploitation, but they're mostly like the closing out chapters. We have a chapter on cryptography that's going to be interesting, and there's a chapter on like hardening, and then there's a conclusion. But all the tough stuff regarding exploit development and learning about writing your own shell code and how all that kind of stuff works, I've learned the basics of that with this book. I can't recommend it enough. I'm definitely not comfortable with it. That's the thing about reading a book. There's a lot of great exercises and a lot of great techniques and stuff that you learn, but you're not getting a lot of practice. You can do the same exercise in the book over and over and over again. You can adapt in different ways, and you'll get good in understanding, and you may even be able to learn better that way. But for me personally, I need to see it in a lot of different places, because if I learn it the way the book teaches and just do those exercises over and over again, I'm learning the exercises. I'm not learning the techniques. So I've gained all the knowledge I can learning the techniques now, and I can't wait to apply those to like the Protostar challenges and really expand on what I know. I think I'm going to do all of the exploit exercises. I don't think I'm just doing Protostar. I think we're going to start with the basics, like the very basics, and work my way up. And so I'll have some video content on that, hopefully more frequently, as soon as I finish Art of Exploitation. So hopefully this video holds you over. I hope you guys enjoyed everything. Thanks for watching.